Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Cambia Grove. We'll get started here, folks, and right now, actually. Welcome, everyone. My name is Nick Jackal. I am the Community Relations Manager here at Cambia Grove. I see a lot of familiar faces. I see a lot of new faces, too. By a show of hands, how many people are here for their first time? Oh, wow. Welcome. Welcome to Cambia Grove. We are a health innovation hub, and what we do, what our core competency is connecting entrepreneurs and innovators with the traditional healthcare sector. So by day, this is a co-working space. It's a neutral co-working space, so it's free to entrepreneurs, and we are just trying to drive innovation in healthcare. So we spend a lot of time talking about how healthcare works, more so how it doesn't work, and where can innovation help fill in those gaps. So you'll see some of our events coming up here on this chalkboard on our website. We have a lot of other events that we'd love to see you back here to really join this conversation. These types of conversations, these innovations need contributions from rooms like this. So thank you for coming here. We are so happy to be a co-sponsor of the event here today. And with that, I know we have a great panel. We want to reserve time, as much time as we can for that. So I will hand it over to Himss Washington.
Hi, everyone. Caitlin Torrance. Kaylee and I helped coordinate this event together, so thank you all for coming here today. We want to thank our sponsors here today. We have Experis IT, Cambia Grove, of course, Solucio Partners, and OTB Solutions. So thank you all for joining, and thanks to our sponsors.
So we have our wonderful panel. It'll be probably 45 minutes to an hour of talking. We want to leave plenty of time at the end to network after. So hopefully you guys highlighted your name tag. Green if you're hiring, pink if you are looking for a job. So please feel free to reach out to people. That's the whole point of tonight, to learn more about careers in digital health innovation. So we have to be out of here at 6 promptly. So if we are pushing you out, please respect the time and space for Cambia Grove, because yeah. And here we go. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. We'll be as nice as possible, but I may have to invade your personal space. Good evening, everyone. I'll get things started. Thank you again for coming tonight. We've got our wonderful panel of guests here tonight. We're going to go through, I'm going to ask them 3 rounds of questions, set it up. And hang on, let me start the Q&A. We will also have right there, slides, app, GOOGL1RK5 for those of you at home if you can't see it. So we are live streaming this right now. So whether you're in the audience, whether you're live streaming, please submit your questions for the Q&A and I'll round those up at the end. But no one came here to hear me. So I'm going to shut up and get started with some of the questions here with our wonderful panel. So to kick things off on a panel, I think it's always good to introduce yourself, your company, maybe what do you do day to day, and what do you think is good versus challenging. So my name's David Cooper. I work with Zelf. We're a company that helps you prescribe anything that's non-pharmaceutical, everything from apps and education to products on Amazon. My job day to day is to work with various health systems to help them build out their strategies, implement third-party partners to bring them on board into the health systems. Sort of managing all that can be a challenge, but the good is you actually get to see what you do have an impact, and you get to see when tens of people start using it, and then hundreds, and then thousands, and realizing that, you know, that really represents care and new ways that people are able to interact with their doctors.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm Kirsten Duncan, and I'm the Director of Healthcare and Life Sciences at Aravale, and we are a health and wellness company in the digital space. And my day-to-day is working with developing strategic partnerships with health systems, which is absolutely fascinating, being at a startup company and trying to develop strategic partnerships within health systems that don't move quite as quickly as we do or as we would like to is challenging, but always very fun. And also working within supporting our clinical trials as well as our research solutions arm, and would be happy to chat more about that as well. I think the thing that I love is no one day is ever the same. Being at a startup is every day is something different, and I love the variety.
Thanks. Is my mic on? Hey everyone, my name is David Ross. I'm Twistle's CTO and co-founder. Twistle was a company that we founded in 2011. The goal as we started was to just improve the health of our population, and we didn't know where we were going, but we found out that if we sent the right message at the right time on behalf of the care team, we could actually do good and achieve better things for patients. And so we evolved over time to kind of craft our solution to large health systems. We typically work well when there's an acute scenario happening. So if there's surgery or a new chronic disease that the patient just found out about, really what we do is engage them over time to try to get them to a better place. And that's not just content, it's questions. And what we found is that since we built a flexible platform, our customers actually innovate with the platform, which is really cool. So we don't come up with those use cases, the health systems do. And just to give an example I was just talking about earlier, one of our health systems said, you know what, we don't need to just engage patients, we need to engage the broader community. And so they actually use our product to go out and find out if anybody's interested in bariatric procedures. And they actually do the outreach through our platform. And if those patients actually decide to get a procedure, they actually get engaged through the same mechanism over time. So anyways, I'm the CTO. I do a lot of everything. Every day is the same because I get on a phone call with Dave right here and Sandy over there. True story. And we try to get one of our favorite customers over the hump. So working with health systems is tough. Working with technology is really fun, but I think the most important thing is that it's meaningful. And everybody that works with us and works for us just really cares about what they're doing and really values the fact that we are improving patient lives and actually can see it happening in real time. So that's awesome. And of course, we're hiring. I've got little green L's all over my, and we're hiring for everything that you can imagine. We're a growing company.
I think that was his way of rubbing in that I forgot my name tag. I'm sorry. I'm Savannah Thompson. I'm the Director of Talent at 98.6. 98.6's mission is to offer quality, affordable primary care to everyone. It's text-based care that's available on your smartphone to everyone across the United States. My role is leading the team that helps amazing people find jobs at 98.6. It's also culture, HR, people operations, and everything that is encompassed in the employee experience, which means that, unlike Dave, none of my days are the same, for better or for worse.
Great. My name is Lee Wager. I'm our Director of Product at MedBridge. So MedBridge is an online education and patient engagement platform. So we started with high quality education with the belief that high quality clinical education can help improve care for your patients. So we really focus in the rehab space. So we started in physical therapy. We've grown physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, athletic training, rehab nursing. We now do not only private practice and outpatient, but everything from inpatient through the full continuum. So outpatient, skilled nursing facilities, home care, inpatient rehab, you name it, we'll try to do it. We focus on, again, high quality education. We've got patient engagement, patient education tools. So we try to engage the patient throughout their episode of care, and then partner with different outcomes companies to actually provide information on what are people doing that's making them perform better, or what are people doing that's, detracting from their rehab, and what levers can you actually use to help get them better. So that's MedBridge at a high level. Day to day, again, no day is ever the same. It can vary from, working with our clients, trying to figure out what are their top priorities, how are they trying to solve those problems, how are they using MedBridge in ways that we haven't thought of yet, down to working with our development team and kind of what are we building, how are we building it, what's the interaction, what does that design look like. So lots of ambiguity, which can be challenging, but also probably the most rewarding part when you see it all come together.
Hi, I'm Yuli Hardy. I'm the Director of Digital Health Innovation at Seattle Children's. We are the only pediatric academic tertiary quaternary pediatric medical facility in the Washington, Alaska, Montana, Idaho region, largely due to the really generous donations from our community here. We're able to offer and give back to the community about $180 million annually of uncompensated care. We also have a really a thriving research division. Our tagline is Hope, Care, Cure. So Hope is our research facility. No, actually, Cure is our research facility. Care is our hospital, and Hope is our foundation. And so we feel very lucky to be in the community and to serve our pediatric patients and families. Oh, my day. So, as the Director of Digital Health Innovation, I have the good fortune of being able to do some of the in the weeds work in building our teams. And this year we've grown a lot in terms of we've had a development team for a couple of years now, really focused on our population health mission and aims. And we were very development heavy. This year we took a novel approach for our department around balanced teams and brought in product managers as well as designers, and have really been honing in our focus around the patient experience to better understand that relationship between Seattle Children's and our patients and families, and to identify how we can reduce some of the friction with our patients and families and serving them better. And so it's been a really wonderful journey. I also had the fortune of being able to tie back some of our tactics and deliverables back to our organizational True North aims, working with our executive leadership to identify a roadmap and a plan to best leverage technology to achieve some of our outcomes. And admittedly, I think the challenge is sometimes we want to do too much, and so our eyes are sometimes bigger than our ability to execute. And so honing that in amidst all of the noise and figuring out how to learn from our technology partners and leverage partnerships with our vendors to really accelerate our model of care is, I think, the wave of the next couple of years for Seattle Children's.
Great, thank you, everyone. Before we move on to the next question, does anyone have like a really good day story of like, oh, this was a great day for me at my job, and one day I kind of think back on, or conversely, maybe a really bad day, just so everyone kind of knows what they're getting into, what they're in for? I'll give you a second to think.
Start with a really awesome day.
Okay, good.
So I think as part of our journey, one of our big learnings this year to many of the vendors and the technology companies here, it may be, done, obviously. But I think a lot of times our IT departments can be really siloed from the mission of what we do. And we have such a great mission, and yet we have technologists that maybe never step foot onto our hospital campus, never hear the stories of our patients and families. And as part of our journey, as we started development on one of our solutions, we did a really deep dive in interviewing a broad swath of patients and families to better understand whether, it was an arm break or a more serious condition, a long-term condition, to really better understand what patients and families needed from us. And so we had several families who invited our design and development team into their homes to just share the story of here's what Seattle Children's has meant to me in the community. They actually told us, here's where my child coded as a result of a cardiac condition. Here's where my husband was resuscitating our child until EMS came. Here was the experience we had, and that day was the last day of my life as I knew it. And all of a sudden, we were catapulted into this new reality. And she walked us through that journey of just of how we as an institution are there in those moments that we're not there for that experience, and how really, to sum it all up, she explained to us, what I want is I want you guys to help me walk with confidence as I navigate this condition. And you as an institution always have a really great place in my heart. There are some things you do well, and there are some places where you guys have really screwed up. And it's in those moments where we can remember the touchstone of what we do and why we do it, that we start to unpack those little moments and understand, what does confidence mean to our patients and families? And whether we build it or buy it, I think it's that last mile that makes the difference in whether or not we have succeeded or failed in delivering sort of a new experience for that patient and family that eases their burden. So it was just a really great reminder for me. I think sometimes it's easy to forget why we do what we do, and working for a company that has such a lofty mission kind of brings us back to the daily grind and enables us to succeed. When we came back with a product designed to this patient and family, it was also super rewarding to watch her tear up, to say, you really heard me. You really heard me. And if in our situation we would have had this app, it would have made all the difference. And so just rewarding moments for us, and a really good day.
Since this is about careers in healthcare and technology, so a really great day for me. How many people in here use One Bus Away to figure out where? So a lot of you. So I was at a bar. Uh, yeah. And I met the guy who built that and maintains that to this day. And he's a brilliant individual, and he's so passionate about doing things. I mean, that thing is, right? There's a lot of value there, and nobody pays for it. There's no company behind it. And I started telling him about Twistle, and I'll keep this short. He's my director of user experience and has worked with us ever since. And I think it was that alignment around doing something meaningful and doing something for the greater good. And that's been our recruiting strategy, and that's pretty much everybody that's joined up with us really cares. So I think that was a great day.
Great. Thank you very much.
No bad days.
No bad.
Swear.
No, everything's fine. Everything. Digital health is a walk in the park. Don't let anyone tell you different. We experience no struggles and challenges. Never. So how about this? How about we switch it up? How did you get your current position? If you came from outside of healthcare, how did you handle the transition into healthcare? Do you have any lessons learned? For me, I was working in the Department of Defense before I came to Zelf as a startup. That is a lesson learned. Maybe don't go from a large bureaucracy right to a startup. It's a little bit of a whiplash for you. And actually, I was in technology before I'm a clinical psychologist by training. So I was in technology before that, went into clinical psychology, and then said, like, wow, I wish my field was smarter about how to use this technology. And if only one of us could figure out how to do this. And so that's what I did. And so I had a little bit of the healthcare background to begin with. And so for me, from the healthcare side, was more about learning technology. And I think maybe that's one of the lessons learned that I found is if you're coming from the healthcare side, the more you know about the technical side, the more credibility you have. And there's never been a better time to learn about technology online. There are literally infinite amount of resources you can use to teach yourself how to do anything. So it's really, the sky's the limit as far as the skills you want to build.
So I have a pharmacy degree and have never used it in the traditional sense. And
Similar, I understand.
I have not worked in a pharmacy, to be honest, since getting my degree. And I spent about 25 years in the pharmaceutical industry providing strategic consulting services to pharmaceutical companies. And I felt that I had essentially gone as far as I could go. I didn't feel that I was learning anything new, and I was kind of bored. And one of the things that I loved was working with clients and being in a leadership position. I felt that I was doing more sort of management than actually being in the trenches and working with clients and understanding what they were wanting to achieve. And so I spent about 9 months very thoughtfully looking for a new job. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had no idea. And so I spent 9 months calling everybody I knew from various industries. And I said, hey, I'd love to take you to coffee. And I just asked them to tell me their career trajectory. And it was fascinating to me to hear how so many people moved from industry to industry. And so it started to open up my eyes to what I might be able to get into versus staying in sort of this small medical pharmaceutical space, really widening my view. And I did a lot of networking. So I've been coming to events here at Cambia Grove for almost 2 years, joined networking opportunities, the HBA, which is a Healthcare Business Women's Association, Women in Bio. There's so much opportunity to network here in Seattle. What I would say, though, is you have to be rather intentional, not just going to a networking event, meeting somebody, getting their card, and kind of heading on out. It's actually making a meaningful connection with 1 or 2 people at an event to really start to create those connections where you start to know who's in the Seattle area, who you might be able to connect one of your, so it's not only just networking for yourself, it's really thinking about how do we build this stronger community and share ideas. And I happened to be at a life science networking event and met our chief translational science officer. And she started talking to me about Airvale. And I thought, that is absolutely fascinating. I've never heard of a company like that. I connected with her afterwards, and she said, I'm really busy. I don't have time. We're not hiring. And I said, no problem. That's when you have time, I'd love to connect with you. And probably 4 months later, she sent me a job interview, and it was a newly created position the director of healthcare, and she said, "Hey, would you be interested in applying?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so I did apply, and lessons learned. Putting yourself out there when you're networking and just really being open. There's so much opportunity and something that you may have never considered. And don't be afraid to be confined by the experience you have, because not only is there technology online, I will say I spent the first probably 4 months on Google and YouTube because there were so many skills that I didn't yet have that I needed to go find myself. But it's out there and it's available between online or books, and so I think big.
I think that's really important. The networking piece, not just, hey, here's what I'm looking for. What are you looking for that I can help you with? Do you miss not using your PharmD degree every night? Sometimes I miss it, and sometimes I'm glad I'm not seeing patients. So I don't know if you ever miss it.
I do, and I'm trying to find different ways to create that connection and use my degree, but in a very different way.
So you'll be handing out free medication after the
Exactly. I
event.
can
Free
prescribe, no
medication?
problem.
That's fine. Dave.
So I actually made a jump, but it wasn't. I've always been in healthcare. Dad's a doc, brother's a doc, sister's a doc, right? Like, can't get out of healthcare. But I never wanted to be a clinician, so I went into technology and eventually found myself in the ISIT department in a large academic health sciences center. And really, I was looking at products like what Twistle is. I was doing some build it ourselves, but a lot of buy it. And there was a certain frustration there. There was a certain kind of like, wow, I could really do so much more than what I do day to day. It wasn't satisfying. I mean, it was great. It was meaningful. I could go up on the patient floor and see how this bedboard product I helped buy from McKesson, really changed how things worked up on that floor. But I just felt like there was a broader world out there, and ultimately, I got a phone call, and I think everybody gets those phone calls, and you're happy in your role. It's good. You've built up those vacation days. I mean, I had like a huge bank of vacation days, like just massive, and yeah, just like pushed on that door a little bit. Like, whoa, wouldn't it be crazy if I just moved to Seattle and did this startup thing? It'll probably like, I remember thinking it'll last 6 months, and then I'll lose all my vacation days because if I come back to my job, I'll be starting from scratch, and that was the scariest part for me. But I moved to Seattle, and the rest is history. That was almost 10 years ago. It's crazy to even think. But yeah, I mean that's the story of how I got to where I am, and I think also just the anecdotes around, I love what you said about Google. I mean, I remember on the way out, one of our board members who's highly technical was kind of, he was interviewing me, and I had never touched the tech stack that he wanted to talk about, like not once. And I remember just Google fooing the whole night, like being like, how am I going to even respond to these questions? And I got through it. And I think it's the you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. I think there's a lot of people that kind of second guess themselves in their ability to walk in and just improve that. Yeah, I don't know this right now, but I can demonstrate that I'm able to learn, and I can gain expertise rapidly. And when we're interviewing, I mean, that's always what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for someone that comes in with a set of experience. In fact, you might have been doing something wrong for 15 years. I'm looking for someone that can demonstrate the ability to gain expertise rapidly, and that could be anyone. It doesn't matter what you've done up until now. You could have been working at Trader Joe's, and there's times where I'm at Trader Joe's checking out, and I'm wondering if that person like is the customer account success manager of the future for us. And I wish they would just talk to me and like say like, what do you do? What are you guys up to? Is there an opportunity for me? Because yeah, I mean, where we're at right now, I don't think there's a single type of role that you could think of in a company that we aren't actively looking for talent for. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
No, I think that's important, right? Because when we go into like some of these interviews or we talk to people at networking events, we're like, oh, hi. Like outside you have your very human face, but inside you're going, don't screw it up, don't screw it up, don't screw it up. Don't say Kristen instead of Kirsten. Don't say Kristen. I did that. But you're human, right? And you want to have that honest interaction, and it's better to kind of come across maybe
Of course, I want you to screw up. Like, I screw up every day. Absolutely.
So I spent the first part of my career working at large enterprise organizations and did exactly what you recommended not doing. I went directly from large established bureaucratic companies into a startup. I had gotten to a place where I found myself kind of yearning for a world where the answer wasn't always, this is how we've always done it, and this is the way we're going to continue doing it because it works well enough. And so I joined a home improvement startup, Porch, and spent many chaotic years with them, learning all about what startup life can be, and it was an amazing experience. After Porch, I joined an education startup and realized that working somewhere where the mission is really impactful and I can go to work every day and do it in a chaotic environment that I love and things are changing and scaling really spoke to me. And so I ended up at 98.6 because the mission of 98.6 is transforming primary care. And it's amazing to be able to go and work with an incredibly talented group of people every day and do that working on a product that I'm thrilled to be a part of. Lessons learned. I think every time I'm looking for something new, and the way that I ended up in healthcare was really being introspective about what things I loved doing and what things I didn't like and didn't want to take with me into the next opportunity or company. And that's brought me to a place where 98.6 is my favorite company I've ever worked for, and I've been there for 2.5 years, and it's a joy to be there every day.
Sorry, let me amend my earlier. I see our CEO in the back, so let me amend my earlier. Not don't do it, but maybe prepare yourself for it. How about that? It's probably a little bit better.
It's not for everyone, certainly. Startup life is
Sure.
It's ambiguous and it's challenging, and the enterprise environment is right for a lot of people. So just know what you're getting into.
Absolutely. Expect things like imposter syndrome to rear your head. I don't know. Like you have those days at your desk where you're like, what am I doing? I'm sitting here and smiling, but I don't know what comes next. And these people are all smarter than me.
Why do people think I can do this?
Great. So my background, I actually studied geology and worked as a geologist for an engineering company for quite a few years after college. And it was another massive company. When I left, it had just been acquired by another company of equal size, so it was about 100,000 people. And I looked around, and at any given point, I would have at least 4 bosses. You had your actual boss, your department boss, you're probably working on 2 projects, so you've got a project manager who's your boss for each of those projects. And I'd look around and say, oh, good God, I do not want anybody's job. And I figured that was a really big red flag, and I should probably go do something different. So similar to Kirsten, did a bunch of soul searching, tried to figure out what do I want to do. Came across MedBridge. At that point, MedBridge was still very physical therapy focused. I grew up with a physical therapy clinic literally in the gym of our high school. I'd really liked sports medicine. I liked being active. I liked the industry of physical therapy. So was genuinely interested in it. Thought it could be a good fit. At the same time, came in as a very entry-level project manager. So I distinctly remember being in the interview, and the person interviewing me, who it's a little bit ironic, she's now our chief revenue officer and was doing recruiting at the time. But she looked at me and she says, you know this is an entry-level position, right? And I said, yeah. There's 20-something people and it's a growing company. There will be plenty to do. And so, haven't looked back since. Have worn many of hats. I started, again, project management on our content team, grew up our content team, launched a few kind of new content initiatives, switched over to our product team, started working on our integrations platform with absolutely no technology background. So if you want to try something really challenging and probably not the best way to dip your toes in technology, go for something that doesn't have a UI. Everything's in the background and you have no idea what's going on. But figured that out, asked lots of questions, lots of Googling. You can't ask enough questions. Our CEO always jokes, I won't ask you 1, but maybe 1,000 questions. So that's definitely kind of my biggest piece of advice. Find something you're passionate about. And don't stop asking questions. If you don't know it, ask somebody else and just keep going until you start to get the information that you need.
Now, Lee, do you have any specific lessons learned on like how to come in? Maybe if you don't know a lot about medicine, like you have a lot of experience in another area, but I'm coming into this new area. Do you have any advice for folks about how to handle that?
Absolutely. Ask questions.
Ask questions.
Yes.
That's what I'm doing, folks. I'm asking
Yes.
questions. I'm practicing.
So
right?
I was very lucky. I came into our content team. We worked with a lot of consultants and essentially the best of the best in the physical therapy, occupational therapy, rehab space in general. And so I got to actually work with the instructors as they're filming the courses and figure out what their research was, review their outlines, and really get to know the industry through that way. I think one of my proudest moments was talking with a client, and they were having some conversation. They said, "Oh, where'd you go to PT school?" And I said, "Huh. All right, I'll take that." I absolutely did not, but really kind of getting to know the content, and that's really from engaging with the people around you, figuring out how can you learn the industry, whether it's networking, whether it's people within your company, whatever's out there. Just try to make those connections and ask more than the what do you do, but why do you do that, and why do you cause why is that interesting? Why do people care about that? Why is that even a career? Why would you even think about that? And you'll get much more in-depth information.
Excellent, great. And I just want to remind everybody, if you have questions, we'll have a Q&A session at the end, so submit them online. We can queue them up. We can maybe be a little bit more civilized than just having everyone yell out a question. No, that's fine. But just want to remind everybody that the online Q&A is available. Sorry, Yuli, go ahead.
Can't remember what the question was.
Sorry. So the question, hey, see, this is the problem. It's all right. We have a great panel, wonderful people here. So the question really is, how did you get to your current position? If you came from outside of healthcare, how did you handle that transition? And if you have any lessons learned?
Yeah. So I don't know how far back to go, but interestingly, I sold knives in college to pay my way through college. Cutco knives, of course.
Will they really cut through a tin can?
Yes.
Okay.
No, but you cut a penny, not a tin can. That was actually a really interesting job because you learn quite a bit as you're learning how to network and how to get referrals and then how to boldly go into people's homes and convince them to buy a bunch of knives. And it turned out I was pretty good at it. What it appealed to, how it appealed to me in college was sort of this concept of you can kind of create your own schedule and you can dream up your own sort of roadmap, follow that roadmap, and do things that are kind of scary. And it bode really well. I ended up becoming a manager there. The reason I was selling knives was I was paying my way through nursing school at UW. But I ended up taking a position opening up one of Cutco's offices because they offered me a $40,000 bonus to go open up the office in Tacoma. And that's a lot of money when you have just graduated from college. So ended up taking that gig and, did it for several years and realized at one point, like, oh, gosh, I don't know that I want to do this for the rest of my life. So I ended up going back to school at UW in the UW Health Information and Informatics program. And when I went through the program, I remember thinking, like, how is it possible that you need an entire medical records department to move paper around a hospital? How's that possible? And I remember the coding classes and thinking, wow, this is not for me. And it was really interesting, even to the point where when I left the program, I wasn't quite sure like what we all were supposed to do. Privacy made sense to me. I applied for a role at Group Health, applied for a role here at Seattle Children's. And networking, I think, was really key there. When you go back to school the second time, you go into it with some intentionality. So chatted with some of the professors and said, oh, what do you think? And actually brought them job descriptions and said, I don't actually know what this is asking me to do, so it'd be helpful if you walk me through, like, what are all of these terms? And so I ended up getting some advice from one of my professors when I got 2 job offers, and she said, at this point, you probably want to look for a mentor at to some degree. So the person who you report to can be really influential when you start at a new company and really understanding the landscape of the organization. So I ended up taking the position at Seattle Children's, sort of getting the inside scoop on the different people that I would potentially be reporting to. And even then, it was interesting. I took a role as a clinical documentation. No, what was it? It was some sort of a quality analyst. And week 1 into the job, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to die in this role. Because I was tasked, we had just gone live with a CPOE, computerized order entry. And I was developing the policies and procedures to ensure 48-hour turnaround time and signing off on the orders. And my job was to go through and find out who was non-compliant and then develop an escalation path to ensure those providers signed off on those orders, which, so I thought, oh, geez, what did I get myself into? I sat next to the coding team, which was awesome. Got to know a bunch of really amazing women. And thankfully, we had an interim manager at the time. And after about a month, they said, hey, you know, you've had some management experience. We'd like you to apply for the management role in health information. So I said, okay, I'll do that. That sounds good. It was, you know, again, it was thanks to all of the support of the people that reported to me, but really just educated me on the norms of a hospital. I ended up chairing the forms committee, and that's really eye-opening, even though it's just this process of approving forms that the hospital uses. You find yourself in all sorts of spaces in oncology and otherwise to really understand sort of the pulse of the business and what the different divisions are really after. Then ICD-10 came. Oh, before that, I realized we were still microfilming. We were microfilming, and not only were we microfilming, but we were spending an obscene amount of money microfilming. And for the records that went offsite to be microfilmed, we spent an obscene amount of money retrieving those records because the patient came back. And so just did a quick ROI, and this is where ignorance is bliss. I didn't know what I didn't know, but started reaching out to different scanning companies and solutions to better understand what does it take to bring a solution like this in-house. And we reported up to IT. So did the inquiry with my director and others and asked to pitch it. And when we pitched it, we got declined. I wasn't the one to pitch it, you know, my director was. And it just didn't make sense to me because the numbers didn't line out. We were spending more on microfilming than we would have spent on scanning. So asked if I could just go back to the drawing board and pull in some people, revisit the decision making and put together a pitch. And I think this is where my sales experience came into play. And ultimately it got approved. And so it was sort of my first foray into understanding how decision making happens at a hospital and how you start to make your case. Then ICD-10 hit and had the opportunity to understand programmatically as the Director of Coding and Clinical Documentation Integrity, the ripple effects of a major change like ICD-10 across the institution and the levels of buy-off that you have to push through in order to affect a change programmatically. I also had no idea at the time how executive level decision making gets made. And that was so fascinating to, you know, go and sit at this table, and within the course, I just learned so much in terms of how important a CFO is to every organization and how they really are ultimately the decision makers most of the time. And so that was eye-opening, and then had an opportunity to just do a lot of training sessions with providers across the different divisions. And again, get a further understanding of how hospital systems work and what all of those outcome goals are and how they drive decision making. Centralized operations, did some things like that. ICD-10 drug on forever, and by the time it went live, I was ready to do something different. And so went to my boss and said, oh, you know, if you have a project in mind, you know, I'm ready to take on something new and learn something different. And he said, oh yeah, we have this little thing that's not going well called our HIE, and our population health strategy is kind of, you know, we're struggling. So would you mind taking on this department that's struggling? And I didn't know what I was getting into. It was actually our integration and our development team. And I said, sure. The next 2 years was a lot of Googling. And I wish there was Google Translate for developers, because most of the time I have no idea what they're talking about. And it was trial by fire. And again, same thing. I owe so much to my teams who were willing to answer so many questions, incessant questions. And we, you know, I think I really pride myself on the fact that we have created this environment of there are no dumb questions. And so we do a lot of retrospectives, we do a lot of vulnerability, we do pair programming, because ultimately we have to get comfortable knowing that, especially in the technology space, you never know everything. And pair program has been interesting for us because our developers, pair programming is where you have two developers sitting together, 2 monitors, 1 CPU, 1 mouse, actually 2 mice, 2 keyboards, and you're basically pairing with each other, and one person's talking through their code development and the other person is watching them, and it's hugely intimidating. They hate it, and yet it's such a great way to immerse ourselves and create that kind of vulnerability to say, here are the things I don't know, and people have different programming styles. And so I think that sort of environment has relieved the imposter syndrome for all of us, and it exists at every level. Myself, to my team, and so it's been this wonderful experience. So one of my former bosses said to me once, always put yourself in a position of choice. So I don't know that I was as intentional about my job choices. It was more about just sort of jumping into opportunities. And when I was ready, thankfully, I've been grateful to know that another opportunity has opened up. So it's been a fun career so far.
That's great. So I think some important lessons that I'm hearing are be open, be curious, ask a lot of questions, because digital health in general is still a very new field. Like, remember, I would talk to students at my graduate program, like, how do I get where you are? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm doing a job that didn't exist when I was in graduate school, so I don't know how to tell you how to get here. But I think being open, being curious, seeking out people who can help you all sound like great advice.
And a lot of people talk a really good game, but don't really know what it takes to execute. And that's okay. There is a place for people who talk a good game because it really pushes the industry forward, which is awesome. But the deeper I get, the more I realize, like, nobody knows anything. It's really amazing. And yet, look at how far we've come.
So I hope everyone is coming out tomorrow night for the Under the Boughs here at Cambia Grove with Elizabeth Holmes. We'll be, sorry, no, that was a joke. Not happening. Not happening. So it's actually next Saturday. So for our panelists, what advice would you have for people looking for jobs? Like building off some of the last round of questions, how do your organizations find people? How are you posting jobs? What are you looking for? And really, what skills do you need in terms of the people that you're looking for?
We're actually not hiring right now, but I'll just take kind of a step back when I think about hiring for positions and what we're looking for. I think that don't ever sell yourself short. I think a lot of us, and even when I think about the job description that I got at Aravale, I looked at it for a while, and then I actually put the job description away for about a week, and I thought I'm not qualified. I don't think I can do that. And so I really encourage people to stretch. And I've heard a couple of people say in different scenarios that if you're not uncomfortable and you're not growing, then you're not moving forward. And I think it's okay to be uncomfortable, and it's okay to ask questions. And you were mentioning, I'm not looking when I'm hiring. So I'm not hiring in this role, but in my previous role, I built a medical affairs department. So I was responsible for hiring the individuals and mentoring them. And I wasn't looking for a specific set of skills. I really looked a lot for who is the individual who's sitting in front of me. Can I imagine them in a really stressful situation? Are they going to be contributing? Are they going to roll up their sleeves and say, hey, I don't know how to do this either, but I bet we can figure it out? I'm really looking for somebody who's willing to learn, who's willing to take a chance, who's going to ask questions. I think some of us feel intimidated to ask questions, but I'd rather have individuals asking questions than sitting off at their desk, not knowing what they're doing, spinning their wheels, actually wasting time and not moving things forward. And I think it's putting yourself out there, taking that leap. So the company that I'm at, Aravale, is co-founded by Dr. Leroy Hood. And if you're not familiar with who he is, I really encourage you. He's a local Seattle individual who's just a phenomenal individual, researcher, scientist. And I was talking with him one day, and I had been at Aravale for about 2 months. And he's done so many things during his career. It's phenomenal. And he said, you should get really insecure every 10 years and change your job. And I looked at him and I said, I'm so glad you used that word insecure, because I'm feeling really insecure at my job, not knowing exactly what I'm doing. And as I look now, having been there a year and a half, and what I've learned, it's absolutely so true. So I encourage you not to be defined by the skill set that you have. You can go out and you can learn those skills, or you can work with other individuals within your company to gain those skills. So really just, I would say, be open and talk to a lot of individuals to find out. You just never know what's out there, and be really open. If somebody asks you to say, hey, come in and interview, you might at first blush think, that job is not for me. And it's fascinating what you'll learn from a job interview. You may actually find out that it's a job that you might like, and you also understand what are people looking for when they're hiring. Because what you start to hear is what people are looking for are personality traits, not necessarily skills. So
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. I mean, I alluded to this earlier that experience isn't always an equalizer. I mean, it's not that it doesn't matter, and there's certain types of experience that are going to be valuable to any position. But I think, I mean, a couple things. I'm not a huge Amazon guy, and I don't love Amazon isms, but bias to action is one that I do love, and that's typically what I'm looking for in someone's background. That when given, you know, when put in front of a ladder, they climb it, right? And that can be. It doesn't have to be doing the same thing that we're doing. I mean, I often say, look, you want to know what we're doing today. You want to know what our tech stack is today. Here it is, but change it, please. Like, come in, make it better. Um, and I wholeheartedly agree on the asking questions thing. I mean, I think I learn more from candidates coming in the door based on the questions they ask than the answers to the questions that I ask. They're thinking about the role. They're thinking about whether or not it's a fit. They're thinking about all of the different equations as to whether or not this is the right position for me, and that shows something. That shows someone that's motivated to make the right decisions and isn't just looking for a job. And so yeah, and obviously I've mentioned this before. We're hiring. We're hiring.
Are you hiring?
We're hiring.
Okay.
And we need smart people, right? That's first. Again, bias to action, super important. We're hiring all levels of talent, from junior to senior level. And I think one of the things that's important, and I think about this in my role a lot, is, hire the guy that's going to lap you. Hire the girl that's going to lap you. Like be comfortable with that. They will elevate you. And don't be scared of someone that maybe has a different set of experience or maybe does something differently. Like it has to be embraced. And that's something that I struggle with, right? Like I've got my way of doing things. I've got the ways in which I like to interact with people. There's a certain stylistic component to any employer-employee relationship, and an important thing for me that I think about a lot is just getting myself out of my comfort zone and being like, this person's going to do it differently. It might not be the way I would do it, but ship it. Like, let's go. That should be what we're thinking at all times.
So our core values are sort of the fabric of everything that we do at 98.6. They are how we work with each other, they're how we make product decisions, and they're also how we interview and hire. So we are looking for people with things like bias for action, deliver impactful results, collaborate and commit. And because we're so focused on that, we've done, I think, a good job of creating a team of people who come from very different backgrounds, have very different perspectives, have eclectic personalities, but work really well together. And so it really comes down to, do you demonstrate those core values, and will you work well at 98.6? I would say from a candidate perspective, when you realize you want to work somewhere, be persistent. As a little anecdote, a couple of years ago, there was a woman who started reaching out to me saying she wanted to work on our marketing team. And we didn't have a job for her, and I didn't know where she would fit. And she reached out to me every other month for a year, until finally I was like, Sam, who's our chief marketing officer, you have to meet with this person. I don't know what she's going to do, but I know that she will be our most passionate employee. We ended up creating a role for her. She works at 98.6 now. She's one of our best employees. I think my only regret is not setting up that meeting earlier, but really persistence pays off, and your passion for a company comes through when it's clear that that's the place you want to be.
So when we hire, we also look at a lot of our values. So we've got four core values: quality, passion, collaboration, and resourcefulness. One of the interesting things about our values is we actually didn't create the values when we created the company. We only added them maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And it was really interesting as we came up with the values, we realized that it really did embody our company as a whole. One of the things that we always look for is that passion and the quality piece. And that comes through in the curiosity, the types of questions that people are asking. Do they want to work for you? Not do they want a job? Do they care about what we're doing as a company? Some of the things that we look for in that is, have people grown in their previous roles? Have they invested in their previous position? Have they been successful? Have they shown that they have that curiosity to kind of look at other roles within the same organization? That can be a really great opportunity to get experience as well if you're not familiar with technology, or if you're not familiar, I run our product team. One of the biggest things, it's, a chicken and an egg. You need product experience to be a good product manager, but how do you get the product experience if you can't get a job as the product manager? It's this vicious cycle. And one of the best ways to do that is look within your own company, look at the other opportunities, look at who are your clients, what are their pain points, how can you start to figure out the voice of the customer, really figure out what are they trying to change. And maybe it's just a side project. Maybe it's just something, hey, this is my normal job, but I'm working with some team over here because I want to dip my toes in it. And seeing that really comes through in candidates. And really, it shows the passion. It shows they're willing to be successful. They want to push themselves. They're being resourceful and figuring out, how can they get that information when it's not their day-to-day job currently. So, yeah.
I agree with curiosity is a major touchstone for us. And for our developers, it really shows up. We ask a lot of questions around what have you been working on, whether or not you've been working recently. And usually a sign of a good developer is that they're sort of solving problems just for fun on their own. To code for 40 hours a week is no small feat. You have to like it. And so being able to see sort of tangible outputs around what you're working on. There are tons of really great meetups across Seattle. And so identifying, are you curious? Do you suspend your belief of what you think you know? Those are all hallmarks for us beyond what languages do you know, although that is a question we ask you because we're curious. And then I think it goes back to that ability to ask a ton of questions. I always find it funny when I ask interview candidates, what questions do you have for me, when someone doesn't have any. It always leaves me feeling a little unsettled because there's this opportunity for, I think it goes back to that curiosity for you to find out more about our institution and to identify, does it feel like a good fit for you? Because that's as not, if not more important than, are you a good fit for us? So those are some of the things we ask for. I often do ask about, tell me about a time that you had a difficult interaction with a coworker and how did that turn out? Because it's a little bit of storytelling and it's hard to fake your way through that sometimes. And it just kind of gives you some insight, because I think we've all had it. If you've had a long enough career, there are situations that you're maybe not so proud of, or difficult interactions that turned out really great. And so I think a little bit of storytelling is really important as you prep for interviews if you are a job seeker. And we also have a few job openings that are out there as well.
Great. Well, I have no more questions. No, I'm just kidding. No, this is perfect. Actually, we've got about 5 minutes, so it's going to go into maybe a lightning Q&A round, if you're ready for the lightning round, everybody. So we've got a couple questions coming in. Briefly, how do you incorporate clinician input into the development of the things that you're working on?
So clinician input is absolutely foundational to what we're doing, because if we don't have their input and their buy-in, we're not going to be partnering with physicians. And so getting it up front is ideal, and then all the way through, because once what you find is once you start integrating, that's when you start to realize, oh, we didn't anticipate that, or this has popped up. And so clinician input throughout the entire process is absolutely critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. Clinician input is foundational to everything we do. We exist to make their lives easier and to do the mundane and easy things on behalf of them. So without the ability to capture what they do on a day-to-day basis and where those opportunities are, we would be dead in the water. And then also, we believe that there's this trusted relationship between a clinician and a patient, and we leverage that. We thrive on that. In fact, we wouldn't be as impactful if we didn't have that. So that's the example that I would use is, we can send your patients a produced 3-minute video of, in a studio of how to change their wound dressing, or you can just film it on your iPhone in your scrubs. And which do you think is more impactful? It's the latter every single time. So clinicians are part of our process for sure.
So we have a few full-time physicians who work on our product team, helping to develop the product. We also have clinicians who are practicing primary care for us, and all of them have a portion of their time where they're working with the product team, with the data science team, with the engineers to help evolve the product. In addition, we have an exceptional medical advisory board that's made up of clinicians across the country that we get together with twice a year. People like Regina Benjamin, who is the Surgeon General under President Barack Obama, which is pretty amazing. And all of their feedback is crucial to how we continue to evolve 98.6.
So I'm just going to echo everything that everybody's already said. But yeah, absolutely. For us, it's, clinician, it's admin, it's decision maker, and patient feedback throughout the whole process. All three of those are key players in what we do. And we really make sure from the beginning through it never ends. We're always on the phone with clients. We're always reaching out, trying to get feedback, whether it's, a phone call, visiting them in person, shadowing them, it doesn't matter. It's absolutely integral to everything that we do.
Ditto. That's fine. No, this is the lightning round. We're going quick. That's great. The answer is, of course, always, every point. So next question. For your organization, what is your North Star of success? Like, how do you measure success? And then how do you use that North Star to prioritize what your organization does?
So ultimately, our company is focused on the end user. And so though we partner with health systems and clinicians are integral to making that happen, ultimately our North Star, we are passionate about helping individuals optimize their health and their wellness. And so our individual members are working with health coaches, and we every other week have an all hands meeting where we have it's a coach's story, essentially about an individual who's had a fantastic coaching experience and has had some transformative experience within their health. And what we find is that your health is such a small portion of how you function. And so a lot of times these stories are not just, well, my blood pressure dropped or I lost 5 pounds. It's I felt so empowered to go out and go to a networking event. So it's things that you don't anticipate that result as successful health outcomes. So for us, we are absolutely focused on, though yes, strategic partnerships are great, but ultimately we're looking for improved patient outcomes, not only clinical outcomes, but quality of life.
So I guess we have like a Big Dipper and a Little Dipper. It's not just a North Star. The Big Dipper is just patient touches, right? We touch patients online, and every single one that we do automated, we know that we're impacting their lives in some way. And so from a volume perspective, I remember when that number went over 1 million, I was like, whoa, we're really doing something here. But then the Small Dipper is really, kind of the downstream effect, right? The outcomes, and they're tougher to measure. But we have this great document of winning stories, we call it. Some of them are from clinicians, but a lot of them are from patients because we do like a feedback loop with patients. And I mean, I've seen ones in there like patients honestly believe that without Twistle, they would have died. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not going to sit here and say that we've saved a life, but it's close enough for me, and that motivates everybody in the company. So that's been our North Star.
Our North Star, as I mentioned earlier, is being able to offer quality, affordable primary care to every person on this planet. We're starting in the US by offering 98.6 as a benefit through employers, but really that patient access is the thing that guides us. We do what we call voice of the patient, where our product team is constantly sharing with the company what our patients are saying about the product and how it's impacting their lives. And we use that feedback to inform changes and evolution to ensure that the patient experience is always at the forefront of every decision we're making.
So our North Star is actually something we call closing the loop. And so for us, it's looking at what are the different clinical outcomes, financial outcomes, patient satisfaction outcomes. It can be any metric. But what's the outcome that you're trying to look at? What are the levers that you can use to actually help improve that metric? And then how can we guide you to take action to use that lever as most effectively and efficiently as possible? So for us, it's really, we look at both the clinician and the patient. How do we make sure that that's a symbiotic relationship? How do we make sure that it's easy for the clinician to get that information to the patient, and the patient receives it in a way that actually resonates, that will actually get them bought in, that can help build that relationship so that way they're bought into their care and they can get better. So it's looking at a lot of the data, what does MedBridge do? What's the patient doing? How do you connect with the patient outside of the visit? How do you facilitate that relationship while they are in the visit as well?
To have a super crisp answer.
It's fine.
But when you have a goal as lofty as our mission is to bring hope, care, and cures and help our kids live their healthiest, most fulfilling lives possible, there's like 1,000 ways that you can slice that. And so I think, our institution has gotten much clearer on how we deliver on that mission, and yet we continue to struggle to figure out, to understand what we have to say no to in order to say yes to the other things. And this year it's been really interesting for us because in the vein of serving the mission with patients and families first, I think we've said no to more things than I've seen before, and that actually gives you a ton of comfort and hope in saying, we're going to do these 3 or 4 things that we said we're going to do really well, and we're going to see it through to execution. And as not fun as an EMR migration sounds, that is one of those things because many of the EMRs have really come a long way. And so to bring some of those commodity solutions to the table quickly, that was one of the major decisions we made. And so it has been really refreshing to say no to certain things. And even within our division, to be able to clearly said, as we look at patient care transformation, as we look to bring hope, care, and cures to our patients and families more effectively the way they want it, we start to focus on things like telehealth and virtual care and really building that out and making it accessible to our providers and our patients and families. And then it allows us to be really mindful about the one thing that we are going to develop in and where we're going to build our capacity to harness that relationship with our patients and families to create sort of that anchor solution through which we increase the confidence for our patients and families and capture the broadest swath of our patients and families to make that effective. So I would say that's been our true north. Our mission has never been more resounding, and our ability to focus in on the deliverables, it's been positive.
Great. Thank you all very much. Thanks you, everybody who asked questions. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all of them, but I want to make sure that you all have plenty of time to talk with each other, our panelists. So please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists here tonight. Kirsten, Dave, Savannah, Lee, Yuli, thank you very much.